Conducting elections does not indicate that democracy exists, but democracy does not exist without periodic elections. INEC alone can't deliver good elections. Good elections can only be delivered with the involvement of citizens. All we do is actually to protect the votes cast by citizens. Elections will hold in 1,491 constituencies in 2023. Starting with the national elections, presidential one constituency, 109 senatorial districts, 360 federal constituencies, 491 constituencies. 471 constituencies. We prosecute electoral offenders. That is what the law requires us to do. But for the last 7 years, I've been saying that this responsibility should be taken away from INEC, because the law has saddled us with a responsibility for which we neither have the training nor capacity to successfully implement. To successfully prosecute, you have to arrest. We have no police. There is no INEC police. To successfully prosecute, you have to have the evidence, meaning that you have to conduct investigation. We have no capacity to investigate. And above all, some of the electoral offenders may be our own staff. How do we prosecute ourselves? So let's have another agency that prosecutes all offenders, irrespective of who they are. We maintain extensive fiscal assets. Many people don't know that INEC actually maintains the most extensive fiscal assets. Almost second to one or two agencies of government. We have offices in all the states of the Federation, in the capital cities, offices in the local government areas. We have the headquarters, we have annex, we have electoral institute, we have staff quarters, we have disaster recovery centers, almost 1,000 buildings to maintain. So we are conducting elections. We're also worried about maintenance of fiscal assets. And in Nigeria today, there is no election season any longer. We conduct elections all year round. Ekiti in the next 2 weeks. Oshun on 16th July. But we're not done yet, because as we speak, we have 20 pending by-elections. 20 pending by-elections. One has gone to court, so there's an order restraining us, so we have 19, including 3 senatorial districts, the equivalent of 1 governorship election. Each time you conduct 3 senatorial by-elections, it's as if you are conducting 1 governorship election. Sometimes people don't read the law with a fine comb, particularly where the law says INEC should take this action not later than a particular date, meaning that the law does not stop the commission from taking the action earlier, because there are other sections of the law that also require the commission to do a lot more. But where the law doesn't want INEC to take an action before a particular date, they will say, don't take this action earlier than that date. So it has to be later. And sometimes the law will say, take this action on a particular day. For instance, the law says that campaign in public must stop 24 hours to the election. It's fixed. Or don't conduct elections earlier than 150 days to the end of tenure, and not later than 30 days before the end of tenure. Or you register voters, but stop the registration of voters not later than 90 days before the date fixed for the election, meaning that nothing stops the commission from stopping it earlier, and there are 1,000,001 things to do in between the end of the voter registration exercise and the conduct of elections. I hope there will be time for us to discuss all this. You know, those who pre-register online must go to the centers to complete the registration physically, rather like visa application. Now, if we allow the 2 processes to continue simultaneously, it means online pre-registrants will keep booking for an appointment until the last day of the physical registration, in which case there will be no opportunity for them to complete the registration. Particularly Nigerians who have been applying from outside the country, they have to come to the country to complete the registration. Between June and December, when we commenced the online pre-registration in the first 2 quarters, 1.6 million Nigerians from outside the country actually applied online but are unable to complete the registration physically. So if you look at the statistics, the weekly statistics that we release, you will see a large number commencing the pre-registration online, but the figure compared to the number of completed registration physically is actually always very high. So we suspended it for that reason, so that those who have already applied for the pre-registration online can now book for an appointment to complete the registration. But if we allow the two to continue simultaneously, it means that some of them may not have the opportunity to actually complete the registration physically. And that's the reason, but it's only one component of the online pre-registration. The law says that there shall be continuous registration of voters. Why did we start 11 months ago? And why are we suspending the registration in June instead of 90 days to the election as provided by law? We couldn't have started the registration much earlier. Much as we wanted to start the registration immediately after the 2019 general elections. Remember the big issue in 2020, COVID. Once COVID set in, much of the world, probably the entire world, was actually shut down. So there was no way we could have conducted voter registration under the circumstances. Even election became difficult for us to conduct. Later, of course, many nations and health authorities came up with the protocols for conducting activities involving a large number of people. Remember, in the year 2020, probably the number of people in this hall would have been half of it because of the COVID protocol. We couldn't have registered voters. But the positive side of the COVID lockdown is the online pre-registration. So it reduced the number of people that gathered in a location, and then it also facilitated the registration. That is the positive side of COVID. So we couldn't have started it much as we wanted much earlier. But even when we decided to start and we doubled the number of centers, between 2017 and 2018, we registered citizens in 1,446 centers nationwide. We said we expected a surge for the new registration. Therefore, we increased the number of centers to 2,673. But we couldn't deploy for security reasons. So what did the commission do? We called a meeting of all the stakeholders, the media, civil society, political parties, and the security agencies. That this is our particular predicament. What do we do? The civil society, political parties, media, and the security agencies told us to be careful about security. We should start online, devolve fiscal registration to identified centers in our 774 local government areas, watch the situation before we devolved to the other centers, including the rotational centers. So it was purely after consultation with all the stakeholders, including civil society. So we couldn't have started this earlier, but we have started. That's the good thing. We are now doing the registration both physically, and we have just suspended the online registration after 1 year, and it continues online physically. There is an assumption that when people vote on election day, immediately you vote, your result will automatically travel somewhere. That is the assumption. INEC can only operate within the confines of the law. Section 60, 62, and 64 of the Electoral Act clearly define the procedure for transmission of election results. And it's a dual mode. You have the manual, you have the electronic. So we have described this in detail on how this is going to happen on election day, and ultimately how we are going to conduct both the manual and electronic transmission. But the law says that in the event of dispute, the electronically transmitted result shall be used to resolve the dispute. So I will advise that you get hold of this document. It's on our website, and study it in relation to the provisions of the Electoral Act 2022, Section 60, 62, 64 of the Electoral Act provide for electronic transmission of results.